So hello everybody and welcome to the Magical New Beginnings podcast. And today I'm joined by Sally, Janet de Gruchy. Is that correct?
De Gruchy.
De Gruchy, sorry, I knew I wasn't going to get that right. Sally, welcome to the Magical New Beginnings podcast. I'm so excited to be talking to you today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sharon. I'm really excited to be here as well.
You're very welcome. Sally, we've met only recently. You were part of our quantum field tapping course. But during that course, I got to see you as being the most magical person working with children. You have the most incredible creative mind, and you also have a lot of gifts and abilities, but also a lot of knowledge. So yeah, let's introduce you to the audience here. You're a primary school teacher, or that's where you started. And you're also into energy psychology, and you've got a psychology background. You got a background in exercise science.
That's correct, Sharon.
You're a yoga teacher.
Yes.
You're a mother, most importantly, of two beautiful little girls.
That's right, Aurora and Sienna.
Oh, both age 5 and 3, so they are at that magical creative stage. So looking forward to hearing some of the parenting tips, or the playful tips, or the therapy tips that you can do with children. So is there anything I left off?
I don't think so, Sharon. I think you've done a good job there.
Alrighty. So you obviously have a passion for children, otherwise you wouldn't have gone into being a primary school teacher. So let's start off there. What drew you to? Oh.
So primary school teaching. Initially, when I left secondary school, I was 17, and I went up to the Gold Coast. I grew up in Melbourne. So I went out to the Gold Coast, and I actually started with a degree in exercise science because I really loved biology and PE theory and all those sorts of things. I was a really sporty, athletic teenager as well. And I thought that I might follow that pathway into physiotherapy. And so I was up at Bond University, where in fact Dr. Peter Stapleton teaches from, who I know you know well. And so I started with exercise science. I did some work experience as a physiotherapist and decided I did not want to do that for the rest of my life. So I think I took a year off to go traveling and work and explore the world a little bit. And while I was traveling around Europe, I met lots of teachers who were based in London and working and traveling. And I thought, well, that sounds like what I want to do. So, so I decided to do that. I also I went back and did some work experience at my primary school in Melbourne, at Auburn South Primary School, and had a really great time there. So I loved the interactive nature of being a teacher, being able to work with kids every day. I loved the idea of being a primary school teacher, where you can do different subjects. You know, you do a bit of maths and a bit of English and a little bit of art and science and history, and you get to cover all of those things. So I liked the I was drawn to the dynamic sort of nature of teaching as well. And yeah, so I ended up doing a 2-year degree in a Masters of Primary School Teaching at Melbourne University. And you might learn through this podcast as well, I'm someone who likes a lot of change and a lot of adventure. So
and a lot of knowledge, a lot of learning.
By the time I was about 25 years old, I'd traveled to about 50 different countries exploring the world. But I was around 22 years old when I finished my teaching degree at Melbourne Uni, and I headed straight over to the UK and was teaching at a couple of different schools in London. So I think I started with Notting Hill Preparatory School, and where I was teaching part-time 2 days a week, and then or 3 days a week. The other 2 days I was going around to doing casual teaching all around London, and traveling every holidays that I could as well. And then in my second year there, I was at Hill House International School with a 3 and 4 year old group. We had about 11 students in our class. It was a really gorgeous school. It's where Prince Charles went apparently as well.
Okay.
The heart of Chelsea. Yeah. And I think it was over there that I discovered my passion for yoga. I started training for a marathon, the London Marathon, in my second year in London. And because I was finishing at sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon, most of my other friends were working until dark and until late. So I used to go training as well. And yoga was just at that stage, I went into yoga for the physical benefits. And yeah, after doing it for a few months, I could really start to feel the energy moving through my body. And I remember also being in a yin class one day in a yin pose and finding myself in floods of tears. So I think I was fascinated with the connection between the mind and the body, that somatic connection that I really felt through yoga. And so when I was leaving the UK after my 2 years there, on my way back to Australia, I booked myself in for a 10-day yoga retreat in Spain at a place called La Chrysalida, which means the chrysalis. And that's where I really got into meditation. I think there was someone there who, I think it was John Tuzer, who ran the retreat, and he introduced us to Vipassana, which means insight. And Vipassana is often they do the 10-day silent retreats when you learn Vipassana. And I was fascinated by that people would sit there for, 8 hours a day in meditation. And he gave us just a 20-minute taste of sitting there with your eyes closed. And I really started to explore. That was from that moment I really started to explore my inner world. So I think when I came home from London, I was starting to really experience a lot of anxiety myself for the first time in my life. I'd been a really positive child and a positive teenager, and always thought that I'd had great resilience. But I think a few things happened around that time that were my first real setbacks. I think there was, for the first time in my life, I had, a boy that I was quite into sort of put things on pause or called things off. And I hadn't been rejected like that before. So that was really hard for me. And it brought up a lot of insecurity. And then I started dating someone when I moved back from London who was a real flirt. And that really brought up a lot of anxiety and insecurity as well. And if I sort of tried to talk about it with him, he would just say, well, that's you, because you don't feel good enough about yourself. It's nothing to do with how I'm behaving. And I really took that on board, and I wanted to go and resolve this for myself and find that confidence so I wasn't affected by his actions. And so I took a deep dive into meditation, really. I did an 8-week MBSR course, which stands for Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. And that was a course created by John Kabat-Zinn. So I really learned about the art of mindfulness with that, mindful eating and mindful walking, and how you can really weave it into your everyday life, mindful movement. And then I went from there to do a 10-day silent retreat in the Blue Mountains. And then I did a kids yoga teacher training course with Rainbow Kids Yoga. And I was teaching at my old primary school by the time I was back in Melbourne as well, at Auburn South. A year 5 class. So I was really starting to bring a lot of these mindful practices into the classroom and seeing great results with it too. I had at Auburn South, they do the IBPYP program, which is the International Baccalaureate Primary Years program. And that's international standardized curriculum as opposed to the Australian curriculum. And within that framework, they have these, I think it's 12 different attitudes. And it's things like, commitment, perseverance, loyalty. I can't remember exactly what they were because it was a while ago now, but I did things like I made a little box. I got shoe boxes and the kids decorated them, and they had like captains for each of the different attitudes. And then they would decorate the box. They would do little role plays to show the rest of the class what those attitudes looked like when you embodied them. And each week the kids I would get them to look out for and write on sticky notes. They would look out for examples of other people displaying those attitudes of kindness or whatever they were, and write down the examples. Like they were doing a little vote or nominating other people that they'd noticed showing these qualities, and they'd put them in the box. And then we would sit around in a circle and read them out. And so that was a really beautiful practice. And I started sort of weaving the yoga into the class that way. And then I think it was after that, after that year in teaching at Auburn South, I actually moved up to Sydney. And I was teaching at Cranbrook Junior School in Rose Bay in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. And I was teaching a year 6 class, all boys. And I think that year I was really confronted with A few things really. I was really shocked at how much medication kids of the age of 11 and 12 are already on. And that was taking them on school camp and being responsible for administering some of the medication as well. And, having to have a clipboard with all their down and give it out at certain times of the day. And it was just really shocking how many kids were already struggling with things like anxiety, depression, ADHD, insomnia, and the solution was just medication. There wasn't anything at the time like mindfulness being taught in the classroom to help them with these things, like, tools for life that could actually help to solve these problems from the root. They were already kind of being covered up with these band-aid solutions like medication. And
Absolutely.
quite frightening. And there was a Year 9 student that year that I was there that committed suicide. So that was, there was a lot of siblings in the younger years who were aware of that. And I felt like that was the best time to bring mindfulness into the school. And I actually went and did a course in one of the holidays, the school holidays, called Mindfulness in Schools project. And it's actually a UK-based curriculum that's the leading, I think they're the leading curriculum in the UK for teaching mindfulness in schools. And it was the .B curriculum that I learned, which is helping 11 to 18-year-olds over like an 8 or 10-week program learn the skill of mindfulness in a really beautiful way. And I really wanted to bring that into the school, and for whatever reason, they didn't want me to do that at the time. And so it didn't really feel like it was aligned for me to stay there, because I was starting to just be so much more passionate about helping kids with their mind. And I just didn't see the purpose of teaching maths and English and all those sorts of things when, like, some of these kids didn't even really want to be there.
Exactly.
Like, how were they?
And they couldn't even focus.
They couldn't even focus. Yeah. And I thought to myself, okay, well, if no one's going to take mindfulness seriously, then I need to become a psychologist. So that's when I actually enrolled in a what was it called? A diploma of psychology.
I love how you're looking on your wall at all your certificates. What was that?
Cool. Got 3 degrees and about 1,000 certificates. It was a graduate diploma of psychology. So that was the equivalent of a 3-year course. But because I already had my master's in teaching and a bachelor in exercise science, I was able to do that in, I think I did it part-time over 2 years. And I started teaching actually when I left Cranbrook. I started teaching for a company called the Life Skills Group, which was teaching yoga and mindfulness programs in schools. And I was running a few of the teacher wellbeing programs as well for the staff at professional development sessions. And that was really great. A wonderful woman called Nikki Bonus runs that. And
Sally, one of the things I forgot to mention was about your book. So yes. I want to get that in before we.
Sure.
So could you talk a little bit about your book?
Yeah, absolutely. So A Rabbit's Tale is the title of the children's book that my sister and I published a couple of years ago. And the subtitle is Empowerment Through Mindfulness. And actually, this is a good time for you to ask this, Sharon, because I think it was around that time that I started writing this book. And this book is, I realized, A Rabbit's Tale. Yeah. So I realized only probably about a year after publishing this book that I really wrote a biography here. Okay. So this little rabbit called Ralphie is, all these things are going wrong in his day. So he decides to just get up and run away and leave his life behind. And so he runs away from home. He packs a little sack with a carrot in there. And along his journey, running away, he meets these other creatures along the way. And these other creatures become his teachers. And he meets them when he's in tricky situations as well. So, for example, he starts running away because he hears something in the woods and he's really scared. And then he meets this face-to-face with this bear. And this bear, Ralphie's really, hyperventilating. He's almost having a panic attack when he runs into this bear. And the bear actually teaches Ralphie to sit down and how to take long, slow, calm breaths. Breathes into 3 and then back down to 1. And then he goes on to meet a snake that he nearly steps on, and he's really scared when that happens as well. And the snake teaches him how to close his eyes and do a senses scan, which is really like a body scan, or yoga nidra. So he starts to listen to the sounds around him and feel the breeze on his skin, and smell the different scents around him, and really tune into the present moment to calm down. And then he meets the final animal that he meets is a butterfly when he's drifting along on this raft, having a wonderful time. And then suddenly he's caught in a current and he panics. And, the more you panic, it's a typical case of the more you panic, the worse it gets. Whereas if you can stay calm under a stressful situation, you're more likely to get yourself out of it. So he meets this butterfly that comes over and says, can you focus? I have an idea that might help you along. Can you focus your mind on a positive song? The whole book's rhyming. And so that's the power of mantra, right? And being your own cheerleader. So Ralphie starts saying, paddle, 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 I am strong, strong, strong. And then before he knows it, he's back on the bank with butterflies uplifting magic to thank. And so those are the three main lessons that Ralphie learns. And then he actually, before he goes home, because he decides to go home in the end, but he finds a small rabbit that's all lost and alone on the side of the bank, that's fallen behind her family and when they were berry picking, and is lost and scared. So Ralphie actually then helps that rabbit by teaching it how to breathe slowly like the bear, and how to do a body scan like the snake, and how to use a positive song like the butterfly. And they practice these things together, and then they journey home together. And he realizes that, the moral of the story is that when you practice these lessons each day, then life is enjoyable and empowering, and you can do things, like, for example, at the start of the book, he was too scared to go on stage. He had fear of public speaking, which apparently 75% of people have. It's called glossophobia.
Absolutely.
So he has stage fright at the start of the book, and he really wants to go on stage and be performing and up there acting, but he's too scared. So he runs. That's one of the reasons he runs away. And then at the end of the book, he's up there under the full moon and he's performing a magic trick on stage. And so I even,
Wow.
when I looked back on this book, I thought to myself, it's like he's got his magic tapping stick and he's doing tapping tricks. And it's, a little bit like, well, I'm still on my journey, but, looking for my teachers and finding my way. Trying to practice these things each day. So that's a rabbit's tail. And I use that in a lot of the workshops that I run for kids. I usually sort of introduce it at the start. And I've got puppets for all of the characters in a rabbit's tail. So, for example, here's Ralphie and here's the bear. And I use the puppets in workshops with kids to practice some of those techniques. And and then I also create some yoga style games where you're acting like those animals, and it sort of helps to embody some of the lessons from the book and just have fun along the way.
Wow, clever you, putting all of that together.
Yeah. And I'm very grateful for my sister too. I have to give her all the credit for the beautiful illustrations and bringing it to life. And I actually just met with her today to check in about another book that we're creating, which has actually been in the making for 3 years now. And she's just had her second baby, and I've got a 5 and a 3-year-old, so it's been a busy few years. But our next book is called I Am Zen Like a Zebra, and it's mindful movement, alphabetical affirmations and mindful movements in nature. So it's also a rhyming book that goes through the alphabet. So for example, it's I'm awesome like an alligator with long and snappy jaws. I am buoyant like a boat floating off beyond the shores. And it continues to go through rhyming. And
wow.
It's some colourful pictures and actions to go along with it.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's so beneficial, I think, for parents to spend that time with their children and also take on board those concepts themselves.
Yes,
so
exactly.
What are some of the other things that you do with your children? You were showing me that in the QFT and the light matrix technique, we use a golden box to put our energies into, any energies that don't belong to us or any energies that we want to release. And you've taken that from that imaginary state into physicality. Would you like to just explain a little bit about the box? Just if there's any parents listening here that want some ideas on what to do with their children, I think you've got some really good ideas.
You introduced me to this technique, the golden box technique. And I actually think that when I learned this from you and you shared it with the group, I was the guinea pig that you were working with at that time. So we were back with a younger version of me that had taken on some stuff from my parents, and you did that with me. So it was really great to experience that from the expert herself. And for me, I think I actually have, it's funny that I'm an energy psychology practitioner, but I actually think I have aphantasia, which means I can't visualize very well.
Okay.
A lot of, most things I do through feeling. I actually, and I think kids like to have tangible things too. You know, they've got amazing imaginations. But anyway, I decided with this golden box technique to actually make my own. So I got a shoebox, a little bit like what I did with my year 5 class at Auburn South, but I got a shoebox and I got some golden wrapping paper, just some Christmas paper with little stars on it. And I wrapped up the box and I cut a hole in the top. And this is our family golden box that we use just about daily. We use it most nights when we're sitting around the table after dinner. And what we do with it is I just cut out these little bits of just plain white paper into circles. And then we actually do it like Pictionary. So the way that I use it is the values that I'm sort of consolidating with my family at the moment are with my small family is kindness, bravery, and honesty. So we think about acts of bravery, kindness and honesty that we've witnessed through the day or that we've done ourselves, and we draw them, and then the other people around the table guess what we're drawing. And you can explain it a little bit along the way. And, you know, my 4-year-old, Sienna's just turned 4. Some of this goes over her head, but I think a lot of it actually sinks in as well, you know. So we do it like Pictionary, and you draw it, and then someone says, oh, you know, that's when Aurora was really kind and she shared her toy with Sienna, who was to help cheer her up or something like that. So that's how we do kindness, bravery, or honesty. And we celebrate those things and we put them in, and we also have there's chocolate coins in there, so we have that afterwards. So sort of rewarding you almost for noticing the good things around you, and then also looking for opportunities to be brave or kind or honest during the day. And like for example, Aurora, we were on holidays in Apollo Bay over summer, and she had a really bad accident on her bike. She hadn't really learnt to ride it on her own properly yet, and she decided to get on it when she was in her pajamas and go down the gravel driveway with no helmet on, because the neighbours' kids were doing that on their mountain bikes who were a bit older. So she followed them and had a bit of a crash. And the next morning, she actually, to my delight, she got straight back on the bike and wanted to keep going again. And so that was an example of how she was brave. So putting those times for being brave. And then another way that we use it is to transform things that have happened, or alchemize things that have happened that might not be so positive. So, for example, I flipped my lid, let's call it. I'll take Dan Siegel's term, where you lose your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala goes crazy. Yeah. So I reacted in a way that I definitely regret this morning, because Aurora was refusing to take a smoothie to school for a second break. She's just started kinder, so all the whole packing school lunches thing is quite new. And I was at the end of our grocery lot for the week, and so I was sort of slim pickings for what I was putting in the lunch boxes. But I thought, oh great, a smoothie, I can do some protein powder and some, all these healthy things, and I had it there. And she really didn't want to take it, and she was actually scared that people would laugh at her. So in retrospect, there's many ways that I could have helped her tap through that with Huggy the Bear or some other techniques, but instead I just felt really annoyed and just got angry, and which wasn't very nice, and I felt really bad afterwards. So before she went to school, I asked the girls to actually, and they're at their dad's house tonight too, so I didn't really want to leave on those sorts of terms. It's only her 3rd day at school. So we actually sat around the table and did the golden box, and I started drawing me getting angry and the smoothie, and they guessed what it was. And you can use color here as well. I love the way that Sharon introduced me to color psychology in the quantum EFT course. And, I drew like red, angry colors on that picture, and then I turned it over, and I actually used the prayer Ho'oponopono as well. Are you familiar with that? Yeah. So
I am.
It's a Hawaiian prayer, and it means I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And I sometimes use that when I react in a way that I regret as well with the kids, to calm myself down and anything too. And I write that on the back, or I draw a calming color, a color that's helping to lift and lighten the red anger. And then that's a way of really transforming, or let's say you're you know, I just love this because it means that you're clearing stuff as you go. So I feel like my kids, instead of traumatizing them with my with my reactions, which sometimes you do lose control, in my case anyway. But my hope is that instead of traumatizing them so that these become like a backlog of heaviness in that they're taking on, like my emotional stuff, we're clearing it as we go for all of us. And I'm teaching them how to do that. And the more you do this with the box, the more it can just become automatic as well. And then we actually burn the contents of the box during fire night, which we try and do at least once a week. So we can sit around and
Wow.
in the fire. And the other thing that we've been doing around the fire is we actually play charades. So instead of doing Pictionary, where you draw the situation, we act it out, which is so lovely for the kids as well. Yeah, so Aurora was, she was so gorgeous. When we were at Malabar Beach last weekend, she found a plastic bag and she was walking around picking up rubbish. So that was really, really great. I think they do a lot of that sustainability sort of stuff at preschool. And so she was going and picking up rubbish. So that was one that, you know, I, for example, acted that out. And then they guessed, oh, it's Aurora picking up rubbish. That's really kind, you know, to the environment. So that was one that we did. And Sienna, you know, when my 4-year-old has a turn, she might like do the same thing, act out the same thing. So something's still sinking in, even though she's not quite exactly got it yet. Or Aurora like picked someone up and was pushing them on the swing at the playground. So that was really kind. And or if we're playing a game of bingo and someone like Aurora, she cheated, you know, she wanted to pick something out that was on her board and she looked at it first and then she owned up to it. And so instead of getting cross about her lying about it, it was something we could celebrate and say Aurora was really honest when she owned up about cheating during the game of bingo.
Love it, love it. And you mentioned the bear. Can you talk a little bit about how you use the bear with your children?
Yeah, so Huggy the tapping bear, I think this is something that Dr. Peter Stapleton does. And I've done her tapping in the classroom course.
Yes, me too.
I did. Oh, great. Yes, I did that when I was teaching at International Grammar School. So that I did it as part of PD or professional development with them. But I think it was through her I discovered, or maybe just online, I discovered Laura Louise Love. So she's a psychologist that's trained with, I think she's trained with Dr. Peter Stapleton. And she's written a book called Huggy the Bear, which I have. And I also ordered her Huggy the Bear, which is this beautiful bear here that's got some colorful dots on the points, the tapping points that can be used for, I think it's 0 to 10-year-olds, she recommends. So it's just got the 4 points instead of the usual 8 ones in clinical EFT that's done with the older people. But Huggy the Bear is something that I often use with my kids, and I pull him out and just even you tap on the bear while you're talking about something stressful, or and sometimes, you know, I've used it when I've thought my kids weren't really paying attention or taking it in or noticing, or they're still crying and they're wanting me to shut up, but I'll still sit there and go, you know, even though I'm feeling really sad right now, because I really miss my daddy, and I wish I could have all of my family together again. I think, yeah, Sharon knows that I got divorced about just over a year and a half ago. So sometimes we have those sorts of missing emotions at home, and Huggy the Bear is a way that we can sit down and tap and talk and cry, and he can help us to process some of those emotions. And yeah, as I said, sometimes I think my kids, I'm like, what's the point? They're not even listening or watching or taking it in. But then you'll see them actually use it for themselves later. So, you know, I saw, for example, Aurora one day, her and Sienna had a fight, which happens most days. And I saw her pulling out a page, and she was drawing a sad face, and she was drawing a sad scene in blue. And I said, oh, you know, what's that? And she said, oh, Huggy the Bear told me to do it, you know, because Sienna had done something to upset her. And I think she'd actually gone and used Huggy and done some tapping. And then she'd just had this, she'd been inspired to then just go and do and draw what she was feeling, which was a really beautiful way of her self-regulating and processing what was going on. So yeah, you plant these seeds.
Amazing. Plant the seeds, and they just, and not a lot of people or parents are aware of this, but children actually learn by your behavior. So they copy your behavior. And it
monkey
seems something, yeah, it seems like something that's so logical, but a lot of parents are still very unaware that, you know, you can't tell a child what to do. You have to demonstrate what to do. So you've just given a really lovely example of that. Is, you know, even when you think the kids are not watching, you're still using the bear, and then they're just learning that through, you know, from watching you. So.
And another example of that, Sharon, is when Aurora, she used to get really upset. And I'm sure a lot of parents, I know a lot of parents struggle with this because I've done sessions with people who have struggled with this, but their kids will, for example, be drawing a picture or trying to write something, and they get really frustrated because it's not perfect, or it's not how they want it to be, or they can't do it themselves. And sometimes they can rip up their page, or they can start scribbling really hard and that sort of thing. And it's that perfectionist kind of mindset, I guess. And when I've seen that happen with Aurora, and she's been doing a beautiful picture, and then she's suddenly just something's flicked. And a lot of it can be just the stress of going back and forth between houses, because this was happening a lot when in the early days of getting used to 2 homes. And she'd start getting really angry. And so I would sort of take her page, and even if she'd scrunched it up, I would smooth it out. And I would say, oh, like, you know, look what we can do here. And I'd turn her mistake into something beautiful. And it's that, I love that term, that Japanese term, wabi-sabi, the beauty of imperfection. So it's sort of modeling how, you know, oh, what can you do with that? How creative can you be in turning the mess into something magic? And so I've done that, modeled that. And even though you don't think she's taking it in, or she's not really interested, I've actually seen her teachers write in reports that she's done that with artwork. And even when someone like accidentally got some paint on her page, instead of getting angry and upset, she's gone, that's okay. Like, what can we do here? You know, and she's she's blended it into a picture somehow. So just, yeah, keep chipping away.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So do you have anything else there that you would like to share with us? Any of your props, your tools that you use?
Yeah, there is a couple of things, Sharon, that I think would be helpful for any other parents out there. And this is just a really simple takeaway from the .B mindfulness in schools training that I did a few years ago. But it's just .B. So the dot stands for, like a full stop, pause when there's a big emotion coming up, and be with it. Just be with it. Don't try and change it, control it, fix it. Just be. And this happened this morning with Sienna. She didn't want to go into her daycare because she prefers her preschool that's only on Thursday, Friday, and she doesn't have the same friends she used to have there. So she doesn't have the usual friends. She was not wanting to go in there, and she was crying on the way in, and she started saying, you know, Mom, like, I'm really sad that Daddy's not there. And this big wave of emotions was coming up. And instead of just dragging her in and shoving her over to a teacher, I actually just stopped exactly where I was as soon as the wave of emotions came up, and just held her and just listened. And I just matched her. I matched her emotion. I just tried to be with her sadness for a moment. And it was amazing how I could just feel the wave pass through her. And they say, you know, it takes 60 to 90 seconds. If you don't interrupt an emotion with other thoughts or actions, and you don't feel, then you can just actually allow it to pass through. And I could feel the wave just come up and go. And then she said, oh, look, what's that over there? And she, you know, she bounced in quite happily, and she changed over to the teacher without a fuss. So that's a good one. Something else that I use when my kids are missing their dad, or like they have a really hard time saying goodbye to their granny as well, who lives in Melbourne. So the separation is really hard for them. And something that we do is we use color psychology here too. It's like, what color would you like to send granny, or what color would you like to send your dad? And we practice just breathing that color into our heart, and then sending it. And imagine you're sending it down an invisible string all the way to their heart. So you're kind of mixing deep breathing to regulate and move the emotions through, with some color psychology as well, to move that through. So that's a really nice one. We've got a little fairy garden in our back garden. So we have Aurora's got a little incense stick called Fairy Dreams that she lights and puts there in the morning. And that's quite a magical, sacred space for her to start, you know, tuning into spirit guides and angels and fairies. And so that's a really nice thing that we do. And it's just nice to have that place to decompress. So she feels like she's got her, it's like her own little meditation practice at the moment without it being too formal. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Unless you've got any more questions about anything, Sharon.
Wow. Okay, just one last question. You were before we started this, you were talking about your daily practice.
Yes.
You run a group for daily practice. You got a website daily. Where did the daily practice come in?
So daily practice, name daily practice actually came to me when I was on my 10-day silent retreat in the Blue Mountains. And it's funny because all those years ago, I think I envisioned it as a place for adults and kids, like people of all different ages, to come and learn different tools and techniques to live a happier, healthier, more harmonious life. And I guess, you know, I still haven't, I guess I help people on all levels. It's body, mind, spirit sort of stuff. It's very holistic. So, I mean, at the moment through my business daily practice, I teach a class once a week for year 5 and 6 kids in Neutral Bay, which I'm starting this Friday. I teach a monthly yoga class at Bupa Aged Care Centre in Queen's Park. So that's for the elderly they call it sensory and stretching with Sally. And I also run, so through daily practice, I also run daily classes Monday to Friday, every day at 6 a.m. And it used to be called 21 Minutes for Me. I've actually changed the name to Morning Moon Magic. So it's triple M. And so that's, we do a little bit of breathing, a little bit of mudras, a little bit of mantras, a little bit of stretching as well. We stretch every body part really, just to start the day in a really centered way. And I run Yogacise classes, which is something that I've created, just that blends a little bit of my background in exercise science and body weight sort of exercise, which is Tabata style. So we do 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off for 7 minutes, and then we repeat for 7 minutes. And then it's also with different styles of yoga that I weave in. And I work a lot with the elements. So with the moon cycles. So I do 4 different practices that rotate through a monthly cycle. And I've also started running this is a new thing that I'm actually launching. We're starting next Monday, 17th of February. It's a 90-day program called SheFlows. And this will be evolving as we go. I've got about 3 women who are joining the program so far, and people can join on any given Monday, and that's when they can start their 90 days. And this is a weekly group energy psychology session where we do some group tapping, and then I weave in a few of my other little magic tricks as well. And there's different options for memberships. If you're doing the weekly energy psychology session, you can also choose to add on the daily practice membership, which has got online or in-person classes. And that also includes daily meditation, just a 20-minute practice every day, or Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I've got my Sienna on Wednesday, so that's with her. And you can also, there's going to be a SheFlows portal. So it's going to have on-demand, self-paced modules that you can work through. And within those modules, there's going to be the mind flow method, the body flow method, and the moon flow method. So there's going to be, exercise and yoga practices that are specific to certain times of the month. And there's going to be guided meditation and tapping meditation practices. And then there's going to be information about how you can start to use cycle tracking and cycle syncing to optimize your, to flourish really, to, if we're burning ourselves out all month by exercising too hard, working too hard, not giving ourselves time to rest when we should be resting, then we're not going to reach our full potential. So it's helping people get back into alignment with nature. Beautiful, beautiful. And this is also works for women who have gone through the menopause as well. So it doesn't just... Yes. I was sort of initially, when I had the idea for SheFlows, it was going to be really helping women with who are struggling with PMS, premenstrual symptoms, and also women who are struggling with PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, because I think I've been affected by that over the years, and it may have played a role in the breakdown of my marriage and also just my decision to leave teaching too. because I didn't have the awareness of what was going on or how to manage it. But I think that was all meant to be, because now I'm here to help people in these ways. So, but there's been I've also got a lot of women who are joining the program, and a lot of clients that have gone through menopause. And this is information they're all practices that can help them too, because, even men, they also can benefit from doing a course like this, because they can actually sync with the moon, the phases of the moon. So they can be resting when it's the dark moon, and they can be out, chasing their dreams when it's the full moon time. So we can all learn to be more in sync with nature and the moon.
Beautiful, beautiful, Sally. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us. If people wanted to contact you or to check out what you're doing, can you give us a website?
Absolutely. Our website is dailypractice.com, and that's practice with an SE, not a CE. And that's because daily practice with an SE, think S for sunflower. 2 reasons. First of all, the SE is the verb, so it's the action of doing. And so it's the daily practice that you're doing. But also, I think that was the only domain name available then. They didn't have CE. So there's another reason. And my Instagram handle is @daily_practice with the SE as well.
Okay, beautiful.
Sharon. Learned so much from you, and I just love the quantum EFT. If anyone out there is thinking of doing Sharon's course, you must. It's an absolute game changer.
Thank you. Yes, you will need to have done EFT first, but the quantum field tapping is to take your EFT practice to a whole new level, working with your younger self in the third person. So tapping on your younger self using the EFT skills, but also bringing in color as well. So more details of that will be on my website. So I'll put those details below as well.
Yeah, having absolutely incredible results with my clients after doing Sharon's course. So thank you. Very grateful.
Beautiful. You're very welcome, Sally. And keep up with the good work, and good luck with your next book. And come back again, and we'll do a little book launch together for your next book when that comes out.
Absolutely, would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm assuming your first book is available on Amazon. Is that correct?
People can actually put it on my website.
Oh, okay.
From my website, on dailypractice.com. We self-published.
Okay, but is it on Amazon?
Not at the moment, no.
Oh, why not?
Well, we're almost through the first 1,000 copies, and because we self-published, we printed it all ourselves, and we've been doing all of the mailing and all of that ourselves. But we're looking at an option to do a hybrid, to work with a publisher for our next book, so that we can distribute more widely.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yes.
Sally, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to watching your meteoric rise to success with what you're doing with children, because I think it's amazing, and adults too. But the creativity you have is incredible. So I love it. Thank you,
Sharon. All right.